this over. And then if you have any questions, oops, excuse me, please push them in the chat. Michaela will be answering questions, and then as soon as I'm done with the presentation, I can go back through and answer any questions that are there as well. So moving into maintenance, I've gotten a lot of texts this week just through previously prescribed macros that a lot of you are either ready to move into maintenance already, which it's about that time sometimes, or you're looking forward to it in the next few weeks or the next month. So you're looking into maintenance macros. So I really wanted to talk about what maintenance looks like and how to actually reverse into maintenance, because sometimes that's the most confusing part. And the last thing I want after getting such great progress, I've seen such great progress throughout this cohort, is for you to feel stuck and that you don't know what to do. So let's put this, just have to hide my chat really quick. So what is a reverse diet? Let me, sorry guys. Did it come out of share or is it good now? Looks like it's good. Okay.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. What is a reverse diet? So reverse dieting is a nutritional strategy used to primarily after a fat loss phase or a period of caloric restriction. Its main goal is to gradually increase caloric intake to restore metabolic function and prevent rapid weight regain. We're going to go through what it is and how to do it, but primarily what it is we're slowly coming out of a fat loss. And this is a very strategic way to do it so that you can keep your progress that you made during fat loss without gaining a bunch of weight or body fat back and prime your metabolism again. So a gradual caloric increase, instead of abruptly increasing calorie intake to maintenance levels, reverse dieting involves slowly adding calories back into your diet over several weeks. This is typically done by increasing daily caloric intake by about 50 to 100 calories per week. And this can go either way. I know some people like to get a little bit aggressive with it at first, you know, a 200 to 300 calorie jump, let your body balance out, get used to that, and then go up a little bit more gradual. I'm a little bit more conservative when we do a reverse diet. So I typically do about 100 calories per week, but there's no right or wrong way of doing it. I just prefer a little bit more conservative way, see how your body adapts, see how you feel, and increase from there. So within a reverse diet, we want to monitor progress. So during this period, individuals monitor their weight, body composition, and how they feel. Adjustments are made based on the responses to the increased calories. So a lot of times when we start to increase calories and we go through a reverse diet, you might actually see more progress or the scale go down a little bit more or inches go down a little bit more. Sometimes that's due to just decreasing stress within the body. You've been in a fat loss phase for a while, that can add additional stress to your body. And so when you're giving your body more fuel, you might actually see more weight loss or more inches lost just from the decrease of stress. But instead of looking at scale weight, I always tell people within a reverse diet, you want to look at your body composition. So how are you feeling when you look in the mirror? How are your clothes fitting? As you're starting to increase calories, you're able to gain more muscle, which is going to change your body composition. But also biofeedback markers are going to be huge here. So you should feel so much better overall. And we're going to dive into that deeper in a minute. But those are a few ways just to gauge progress as you're going through a reverse diet, heading to maintenance, because the scale is definitely not going to show full picture anymore of what's going on. So in a reverse diet, we definitely want to focus on our macronutrients and our micronutrients. So the emphasis is often on maintaining a balanced intake of macronutrients, which most of you are logging and doing this already. So your proteins, your fats, and your carbs to support muscle retention and support muscle growth, because you're going to have more fuel to build muscle, and overall health. So making sure you're full and satiated, making sure we're giving your body what it needs to balance energy and recover throughout the day. So when you eat less, so when you're in a fat loss phase, we're eating less, your body instinctively starts preparing for famine in several ways. So your basal metabolic rate, your BMR declines. That's the amount of energy you need to live when at rest. This reduces energy out. So your BMR starts to decline when we are in a fat loss phase. And that's just because your body's like, hey, they're only feeding me this much. We need to preserve our energy as much as possible. Exercise becomes a little bit more difficult, typically towards the end of a fat loss, because you have less available energy. You're fueling your body less. If you've ever tried to do an intense workout on a low-calorie diet, you know exactly what I'm talking about right now, and some of you might start to feel those effects. Typically, we don't, cut severely low, so a lot of you should have felt pretty good throughout the fat loss phase, but usually towards the end of a fat loss, you will know, ooh, this is feeling a lot harder. I'm a lot hungrier. It's taking my body a little bit longer to recover than maybe it has in the past. You're likely to burn fewer calories through activity just because, again, you don't have that energy to give what you gave when you had higher calories. You typically expend less energy through exercise because as your body gets smaller, it doesn't require as much fuel, and your metabolism also adapts to make you more efficient. This also reduces the number of calories you burn through movement, resulting in less energy out. Daily activity outside of workouts, think like pacing when you're on a phone call. I know Michaela's talked about this, walking to your car, fidgeting, lessons resulting in reduced energy out from non-exercise activity, thermogenesis. So our NEAT typically goes down. So we're just burning less calories throughout the day because we just don't have energy to do so. Digestion will typically slow, so your body can absorb as many nutrients as possible. This increases energy in. So you'll notice all of these little things will start to happen when you're in a fat loss. And typically you'll notice them more and more when you're towards the end of a fat loss. It's more so your body telling you, hey, it's time to come out of a fat loss for a little bit. We need a reverse. We need more fuel. And that's a few really good signs of biofeedback of what we're looking for. And we're going to dive into all these a little bit more. So why do we reverse diet? This was a big one. And I see it a lot where people, they went into a fat loss phase. A lot of my one-on-one clients do this. So I did keto before, I did this before, and it worked. But as soon as I stopped, I gained all the weight back. And it's typically because you're going from a very little amount of calorie, and then all of a sudden you're going to, maintenance or above. So you gain, the 10 pounds back plus some, and was it very strategic? So I do love a reverse diet just because, again, we're increasing your caloric intake slowly, letting your body adjust. We're looking at biofeedback markers, and we're adjusting you into maintenance without this all or nothing mentality. So preventing rebound weight gain after a fat loss phase, the body can be more susceptible to gaining weight quickly if caloric intake is increased too rapidly. So for instance, if you're going from 1600, then all of a sudden you're like, I'm done with my fat loss, and you're eating 2200, you're probably going to gain some additional weight and body fat along the way. Restoring metabolism. Prolonged caloric restriction can slow down metabolism. Gradually increasing calories can help restore metabolic rate and hormonal balance, making it easier to maintain the weight that you got to within your fat loss, or just the body fat percentage that you got in your fat loss. You might not have noticed the scale go down much, but maybe your clothes are fitting a lot better. You're feeling a lot leaner. And so we want to be able to keep that progress as much as we can while also restoring your metabolism, making it much easier to go into a fat loss later. So we want to restore muscle, or sorry, we want muscle preservation. That was a typo right there. Reverse dieting can support muscle retention by providing the necessary nutrients for recovery and growth, especially if combined with resistance training. So sometimes in fat loss, especially if you go too low in fat loss too fast, you will lose some muscle, unfortunately. Within a reverse diet, this is where we really want to support your muscle. We want to maintain the muscle you've already built, but also work on building more muscle. So we're giving your body more fuel to burn or to build muscle. We're giving your body more fuel for recovery. So some psychological benefits as well. It allows individuals to adapt to a higher caloric intake without feeling deprived. This approach can help foster a healthier relationship with food. So A reverse diet is so important for the mental aspect of it as well. I have a lot of clients that come in and they're terrified of eating any kind of food because they're terrified of gaining weight. And what this really allows us to do is restore your metabolism, build muscle, but get you comfortable with food again. Knowing that, if you eat 2,000 calories and we do it correctly, you can eat cookies and you can eat pizza and you can eat that bread while still focusing on whole foods mostly, but you can have all these things and they're not going to be good or bad foods. I always like to think of foods as foods that really fuel your body, make sure you feel your best, give you the energy you need, help with digestion. And then there's fun foods that we all should be able to enjoy without categorizing them as good or bad. And I do feel like slowly increasing calories and getting you to a place where there's no good or bad foods, you're able to enjoy all foods is such a cool place to be mentally. And it really does help when you go into a fat loss place in the future because nothing's off limits. We're able to fit things in and you're not depriving yourself. So that leads to less binging as well. So sustainable eating habits. Reverse dieting encourages mindful eating and helps individuals learn how to maintain their weight in a sustainable manner rather than resorting to extreme dieting practices. And so we should be living out of a fat loss for much longer than we're living in a fat loss. And for this alone, we want to be able, like I just said, to eat all foods, enjoy food without restriction, and not be scared of food. And so this really does create really good eating habits as we build you back up to maintenance, allows you a lot more flexibility. And then in the future, when you go into fat loss, you're like, oh, it's only going to be 8 weeks, a little bit less calories. I can still fit in, my weekly ice cream with my kids or pizza night. And it's not that big of a deal because as soon as I build back up, I'm going to have much more flexibility. So reverse dieting in summary is a strategic approach to transitioning from a weight loss phase to a maintenance phase, aiming to stabilize your weight, restore metabolism, and promote a balanced relationship with food. So if you increase your calories gradually, your body will adapt in the other direction. When properly done, reverse dieting provides several metabolic benefits. So this can be really scary. I know a lot of us are used to living in a diet phase. I think for about 10 years of my life in my 20s, I literally lived on either 1,500 calories or 3,000 calories because I would binge on the weekends. And so really getting used to maintaining my weight and finding a way that I could still make progress, still have this body that I loved, but being able to enjoy foods really came from reverse dieting and learning how to eat at maintenance. So when we're going through a reverse diet and when you actually hit maintenance, your BMR rises, resulting in more energy out. Workout capacity increases thanks to more available energy, increasing energy out. NEAT typically increases. We have more energy for the same reason, resulting in more energy out. And digestion returns to normal. So a lot of times what I see when someone's been dieting for a very long time or it's time to come out of a fat loss is digestion will be thrown off. They're constantly bloated. They can't seem to go to the bathroom normally, a little probably more constipated, things of that. That's a really good sign that you need to bring fuel up. In order to get this effect, it's important to add calories slowly. That's primarily because the body seems to respond differently to varying rates of overfeeding. And so again, it's just making sure that we're adding calories in at a rate that your body can keep up with rather than going to that all or nothing mindset, which you see a lot of when people come out of fat loss phases. So signs it might be time for a maintenance phase. And I know I've talked to a few of you in my chat that are experiencing a few of these. But if you're taking this longer than the cohort, again, some things to keep in mind when it's time to hey, it's probably time to come out of this fat loss and move towards maintenance. If you've reached a plateau or you are finding it difficult to continue losing weight despite being in a caloric deficit, so if you're at low calories, you're like, hey, I'm not feeling great, but nothing's really moving anymore, it might be a sign again to bring you back up to maintenance, reverse diet. Stay there for a while and then go back into a fat loss phase in the future. If you're experiencing fatigue, decreased energy levels, or difficulty concentrating, and when I say fatigue, I know as adults we're all kind of fatigued in one way or the other, but this is like more so extreme fatigue. Like, hey, I am so tired. I don't know why. This is different than I felt in before. You will definitely experience that extreme fatigue where it's like, hey, my body is just not recovering like it has in the past. If you're looking to transition to a more feasible and sustainable eating pattern while maintaining weight, so sometimes in summer, I know a lot of my clients right now are traveling or, they got baseball tournaments or there's just a lot going on. A lot of times this is when we say, hey, for right now, let's move you to maintenance. It's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a lot less stressful. You're able to stay consistent there. And then when things slow down a little bit, we can talk about going into more of a caloric deficit. But again, it defeats that all or nothing mindset of like, oh, if I can't stand my fat loss, screw it. I'm just going to like go all out for my vacation and then I'll get back to it when I get back home, where it's a lot easier to just stay consistent at a higher calorie intake when things are a little bit more stressful and you're not able to stay as consistent. If you've been eating in a calorie deficit for an extended time, especially if it's been a sustainable or substantial calorie deficit. So if you've been in a caloric deficit for months and months and months, and I know some of the clients that I've talked to in the past were already in a calorie deficit when they signed up, maybe plateaued, and then we took them a little bit more aggressive. So if that's you and it's been an extended amount of time, or maybe you've never went to a reverse diet or never tried eating at maintenance, this would be a really good sign like, hey, let's try bringing you up. Let's see how you feel and then go from there. If your medical provider has indicated there may be issues with hormones, thyroid, or inconsistent or loss of period. So obviously this would be more so when we get labs. Hormones might be thrown off, thyroid might be thrown off, or you have lost your period, or maybe you skip a period. This is definitely where I take a lot of clients back up to maintenance, and we really try to stay consistent there, really optimizing hormones as much as we can, and really focusing on health and biofeedback for a while. If you're noticing a loss of muscle strength because your body is breaking down muscle to use for energy as opposed to fat. So this is more so when you get really, really aggressive with fat loss, or if you've been here for a very long, extended amount of time, you might notice I've lost a lot of muscle, or, maybe I could deadlift 200 pounds before and now my deadlift's, 135, 150. Hey, it's probably time to bring you back up. Your body's just not able to keep up with what you're trying to do. If you're noticing an obsession with food, feeling deprived or guilty based on your food choices, this is a huge one. If you're falling into that all or nothing mindset, you notice on the weekends you're binging, you can't control yourself, or if you get around a cookie, you're eating 10 cookies instead of being able to enjoy one or two. This is where I really, really try to get my clients to come up to maintenance. Let's create a really great relationship with food first, and then we can bring you back into a deficit, because that all or nothing mentality is what's going to constantly keep you stuck, and no one feels good being there. So if you are struggling with your relationship with food, binge eating it all, or just not being able to stay satiated or to stay away from cravings, this would be a really great sign to bring calories back up. If you want to shift the focus from fat loss to building muscle, athletic performance, or increased energy. So typically this is where I tend to go back into maintenance, where if I've been in a fat loss phase and I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe I lost a little bit of muscle. I feel good. I feel lean, but now I'd really like to focus on building more muscle, athletic performance, or, I just want more energy. This is where you would reverse, because it's really, really hard to build muscle in a fat loss phase. And again, it's going to take much, much longer. So if you're looking to change your body composition, increase your muscle mass, you're going to want to bring up your calories to maintenance. If you're experiencing persistent and consistent fatigue, struggling with workout recovery, or increased consistent soreness, joint achiness, or noticing a decrease in daily movement. Again, we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but if you're not able to recover, if fatigue is like much more than it maybe has been in the past, joints are achy, not wanting to do anything, I'd rather sit on the couch than get in my daily walk. again, those are signs that your body's telling you we need more fuel. If you are noticing big mood swings or having more difficult time being patient or managing emotions, this actually happened to me after dieting in my late 20s. I remember being so moody and snapping on my husband and my kids one day, and I was like, I don't want to be this person anymore. And it was because I was literally living in a diet. All I was focused on was food or trying to lose more weight or whatever that was. And I remember thinking, I can't live like this anymore. I can't stay like this. So that's a big sign too. If you notice, big swinging mood swings, being impatient, not being able to manage emotions well, it's probably time to come up. And then the last one, if your sex drive or frequency and maybe initiating sex has decreased, typically this will tell you if sex drive is like little to none, you can't stand if your husband, your boyfriend, your significant other touches you, it's typically a sign to bring calories up and focus more so on maintenance. So the benefits of optimized maintenance, and we went over this a few times, but consistent energy levels, improved workout performance, optimal nutrient intake, better health, improved metabolic capacity, hormonal optimization, muscle maintenance, muscle gain, so we're gaining more muscle, reduced stress to improved moods, sustainable eating habits, cardiovascular health, reduce risk of chronic disease, digestive health, enhance quality of life, and a lot more social ease. So a big one too, I hear this a lot, is sometimes people want to go into a maintenance phase and they want it to be like, hey, if I do this for a month, can I go back into a calorie deficit? And my answer is always no. You need to be out of a fat loss phase for longer than you are in a fat loss phase. We need to focus on your biofeedback. We need to focus on your metabolism. We need to focus on really getting you in a good spot to go back into fat loss. For one, then it doesn't have to be as extreme. If you focus staying on out of fat loss for longer than you are in one, increasing metabolic rate, gaining muscle, and getting your body in a really good position for an increased amount of time, fat loss is going to be 10 times easier rather than going up for a little bit, being uncomfortable, and then saying, never mind, I'm going to go back into a fat loss, which is where you have to get a lot more aggressive. So once or twice a year is typically a good spot to be in for fat loss. Duration, it can be anywhere. It says 12 to 20 here. I've seen some do like just a mini cut at like 8 weeks. They lost 4 or 5 pounds. They've noticed they've gotten a lot leaner and want to build back up. I've seen it go longer than 20 weeks as well. So it really depends on how aggressive you're going to get within your fat loss and your biofeedback, like we had just talked about. Staying in optimized maintenance most of the year. So like I said, you should be out of fat loss for much longer than you're in fat loss. In fact, most of your year should be living at maintenance. And think about your year and life happening and plan fat loss phase and maintenance accordingly. So I typically try to plan my fat loss phases. Doesn't always happen because I have 3 kids where it's a little bit less stressful. And then when things are a little bit crazier, I can't stay maybe as consistent with hitting things spot on. I'm coming back up to maintenance. It gives me a lot more wiggle room. It's a lot less stressful. And it's very helpful when in fat loss because I'm able to kind of get in fat loss, do my thing, get the results I want, and then build back up a lot easier. So maintenance mindset, and I do feel like this can be the hardest part about maintenance is just the mindset behind it. And sometimes if you've been living in a fat loss phase for most of your life, and I know a lot of us have, the mindset behind it is really hard. And this is where I'm gonna kind of push people to get comfortable being uncomfortable at first, because if you're not used to eating maintenance calories, it feels like a lot of food. Sometimes the scale spikes and we instantly want to say, hey, I'm going to go back into fat loss. This is not where I want to be. So the mindset behind it can be extremely challenging. So I'm going to post this in the chat afterwards too, because I do think these are cool questions to have as you guys build and go into maintenance and reverse diet on your own. But why am I doing this reverse diet? So what is the why behind it, and what do I hope to gain from it? So why are you doing maintenance? What do you hope to gain from this? whether it be more muscle, a better relationship with food. Maybe your energy just is awful right now. I want to be able to wake up in the morning and have so much energy and chase my kids around the park again. I mean, I would list your whys because on those really hard days where you're like struggling mentally with adding more food, maybe feeling a little bit puffy that day or whatever it may be, you can always go back to your why. Why are you doing it? Okay, I'm going to push through this. I'm going to listen to the plan, not my emotion today. And tomorrow is going to be a new day. Am I committed to long-term progress, not just short-term aesthetics? So this is a huge one. And this is typically where people get stuck. They get stuck with the number on the scale, maybe increasing. Maybe you jumped a couple pounds because we increased calories and we're like, never mind, we're going back into fat loss. Well, if you look at long term, okay, I'm going to increase calories. I'm going to build the body of my dreams because I'm going to put more muscle on. I'm going to really have optimal feedback. And then I can focus on fat loss again rather than, ooh, I'm scared the scale is going to jump a couple pounds and then I'm going to feel puffy and then I'm not going to want to do things or whatever it may be. So, really looking at your long term plan rather than just short term feelings within those moments. What does success look like beyond the scale? This is a huge one. So a lot of times we have a very much a goal weight when we go into fat loss, and that alone can be motivating. Okay, I weigh 150 pounds right now. I would love to weigh 140 pounds. Okay, as you start seeing that scale go down, that's super motivating. But in maintenance, those you don't have that motivation all the time. You don't have that scale telling you, okay, you're heading in the right direction. So what does your success look like beyond the scale? Maybe it's a strength goal. Maybe it's an athletic goal. I want to go run a marathon, or I want to deadlift 250 pounds, or whatever it may be. I want to do 5 unassisted pull-ups. But having a goal on what success can look like in maintenance, I think is really, really important. And it doesn't even have to be a goal like that. It can say, you know, I want to really focus on feeling my best, getting my menstrual cycle regular again, you know, having a sex drive again, or just being able to play with my kids without feeling exhausted by the end of the day. All those are goals that to me are much more successful than a number on the scale. But finding what your success looks like as you're building back up to maintenance, I think is really important. Am I defining my self-worth by a number or by how I show up for myself? So I can promise you, and I'm sure a lot of you have already seen it, you're always going to see that scale spike up, and it's going to spike up for a million and one reasons. And a lot of times, you know, we sit there and we're like, oh, we're regressing in progress. You know, again, we need to go back into a fat loss. If I weigh more than 130 pounds, well, you know, no one's going to think I'm pretty or whatever it may be, or, you know, the crazy things we tell ourselves. I know I've told myself all these things before. So, are you defining yourself by a number on the scale? And how are you going to show up for yourself on those days where maybe you have those emotions? For me, when I've had those emotions in the past, I make sure to just take a step back, remind myself it's just a number, remind myself so many things affect that number. Maybe I had more sodium than normal that night. Maybe I ate later that night. Maybe I just crushed a workout the day before and I'm super inflamed. Maybe I'm about to start my period. I mean, there's so many reasons why we see a number on a scale go up, but we shouldn't be defined by that. And on those days, let's figure out what we're going to do to continue to show up for ourselves. Typically, I will just put my headphones on, I'll go for a walk, and I make sure to follow the plan I had for that day, despite how I felt about the scale that morning. What would I say to a friend going through this? Can I extend that same compassion to myself? So, we talk really awful to ourselves. A lot of us do. And we're really mean to ourselves, but we would never talk that way to someone else, whether it be our children, our spouses, our best friends, our family, our mothers. We would never talk the way we talk to ourselves to someone else. So when I get in that mindset of like tearing myself apart, I have to remind myself I need to show myself the same compassion and empathy and love that I show so many others. And this one's a big one. As you come out of fat loss, it can be really hard. What progress have I made that the scale can't show? So this is a huge one. This is where you would really focus on biofeedback markers, whether it be, I slept 8 hours. I haven't done that in forever. I feel so much better today. Oh, I hit a new PR in a compound movement that I was doing. I feel great. I actually wanted to initiate sex with my husband last night or whatever it may be, but there's so many ways to dictate progress beyond just what a scale shows you. And a scale can be a really hard mindset thing to break. But if you can find ways of showing yourself, hey, I'm making progress in so many other areas, it's much easier to look at that number without emotion. And then what lessons am I learning right now that will help me in future fat loss or fitness phases? Maybe you came out of this and we did go to all or nothing. And sometimes that happens where we like, okay, I'm out of fat loss, and you went to out with friends and you overate and you had 5 cookies and desserts. Okay, it's, a small amount of time. That didn't work well. Okay, what can I do next time to really prevent this from happening again? Or what do I need to work on now? Maybe my relationship with food isn't what I thought it was, and now I really want to build up to maintenance and really focus on my relationship with food before I go into another fat loss phase again. So there's so many lessons here. And as everyone starts to transition out, whether it be now or in the next couple weeks or even like a month from now, remember that progress is not linear, and that if you fall off the wagon or there's times where you're over it, you're scared, you want to go into fat loss, that is just a short-term emotion, and that you have to look at the bigger picture. And then questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can answer questions. Awesome. I know there's not any questions in the chat right now, but even if there's not any questions, I would love to hear how you guys are feeling, like coming out of fat loss. Even if you don't want to talk about it now, presenting it in the chat later. Like, how are you guys feeling coming to fat loss? Are you scared? What are questions you have about it? Yeah, anything. I think I can't hear you, Michaela.
Can you, can you hear me now or no?
Yes, it just sounds really quiet.
Okay, let me adjust my audio real quick. You can finish your thought.
And again, I know not everyone made the call today. So if you're watching this later on and you have any hesitations about a reverse diet, questions about a reverse diet, or if you need your maintenance macros, like I said, please reach out to your coach. But we really want to support you because just like Jen said, I'm terrified. Most people are terrified coming out of fat loss. We feel comfortable with routine, and we feel comfortable with just knowing like, okay, I have to eat this amount of calories, and this is how I make progress, and this is how I stay lean. But it's not where we want to live. So I'm challenging everyone to kind of step out of your comfort zones here.
I was just going to say, can you hear me now, Maurissa?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, when you talked about doing fat loss and you like to take it really conservative, I'm the opposite. And I love to jump up like 200 to 300 calories initially, and then do really small 50 to like 100 calories per week after that. Just because for me, hunger is usually pretty high at the end of a deficit. So I just like to like relieve that quickly. I'm less likely to overeat because of that. And that feels good for me. So I think just like thinking about maybe what your personality is, and also just like how hungry you are right now, and choosing a strategy that feels right for you. There's no like right way to do it. The one thing I will say though is, if you do make a bigger jump initially, you're going to see a bigger jump initially on the scale. That doesn't mean you're gaining fat, especially because if you jump up 200 to 300 calories, like you're not to maintenance yet. But you might be getting close. So just staying there, maybe stay there for 2 to 3 weeks and just like assess, like, okay, is the scale maintaining? All right, I'm going to keep inching up from here and see how high it can go. But your new maintenance intake is going to be different, likely, than your prior maintenance intake. So keeping that in mind too. If you started out at 2,000 calories, you ended your deficit at 1,500 calories, you're not going to jump back up to 2,000 calories likely again. So maybe jump up to 1650 to start, maybe 1700, see how you do there, and then maybe bump up 1750 or 1800 and just kind of go from there. So that helps for me to just think of it that way. And yeah, we have some comments here too.
Yeah, so feeling fuller as we're building back up to maintenance is completely normal. I know that was one of the comments too. Your body has adjusted to less food for a while, so increasing to maintenance might feel a little bit harder at first. And with that, I will say it becomes easier as your metabolism adapts. So what we see a lot is, okay, this feels like way too much food. I can't eat it anymore. And then as you're strength training, you're building more muscle, metabolism is slowly starting to increase. I always get that text from my clients, oh my gosh, I woke up so hungry today. And it's literally your body saying, okay, we're adapting, metabolism is increasing, and then you can start to increase from there. If you're feeling really full and satiated, maybe do it a little bit more conservative, 100 calories, see how you feel, and then again, build from there.
I was just looking,
Hard to
I'm
imagine.
getting mentally tired of tracking. I've been in a deficit since January, February, so it's been a while. How do you guys transition from tracking 100% of the time to letting go of that, or do you still track every single day?
So in maintenance, as I'm going through a reverse diet, I do tend to like to track just to see where my calories are at, making sure I'm still getting enough protein and then building up to where I think around where my maintenance is. Again, maintenance isn't a certain number. It's a broad range of numbers. So it can be anywhere from like 300 to 4, 5, 600 calories where you're staying within maintenance. So it's not going to be an exact number. When I get to the point where I feel like I'm at lower end of maintenance, I do typically transition into intuitive eating. I really only track my food 100% of the time when I'm in a fat loss phase, just because it's going to give me the most data. I'm going to be able to stay the most accurate. And I like, again, being in fat loss, I like getting in, I like doing my thing and then getting out, and tracking helps me with that. But as you're transitioning into intuitive eating, this is a big one. It can sometimes feel hard. I like to go a little bit slower with clients, and maybe Michaela has another way of doing it because, again, there's no right or wrong way. I'll typically have clients just track protein and fiber for about a few weeks, just making sure they're getting in protein, they're getting in fiber throughout the day, they're still hitting that goals. And then we tend to slowly come off of it from there to where it just feels natural to hit that much protein, natural to hit that much fiber. By that time, you've been tracking for enough time to kind of know what portion sizes look like, about where your protein is, about where your fiber is. And again, you're going to be in maintenance, so you have a pretty big wiggle room of calorie intake as well. And then it's a lot easier to go into fully intuitive eating. Do you have anything to piggyback on that, Michaela?
No, I'm the same way. Yeah, when I'm in maintenance, I usually don't track. If I do, it might be for like a week at a time. Like track for a week and just kind of see where I'm at. Or if I feel like, oh, it kind of seems like it's been a really busy season. For me, in busy seasons, I tend to eat more calorically dense foods. I don't necessarily eat more with more frequency. So sometimes it can feel like I'm not eating as much, but really I'm eating more in terms of calories because maybe we're just getting more takeout or going out to eat more, grabbing quick things. And so sometimes if I'm in a busy season, I will lean more towards a calorie surplus. And so I might notice that and I might just feel usually I just feel like, oh, things are getting a little tight. I'm not feeling as good. And so then I might track just to kind of see where I'm at and make sure I'm in maintenance and just like redial things in terms of food volume and veggie intake and fiber intake and make sure I'm getting enough protein. But then I go back to more intuitive from there. I like to be intuitive in my day to day. If I have a set fat loss goal, then I definitely track because I'm not one to intuitively be in a calorie deficit. And I like to maximize my food intake when I'm in a calorie deficit. So like I want to make sure I'm eating as much as possible to elicit fat loss, but no less. So that's really important to me. So I like to track. I like to have that data when I'm in a fat loss phase. But another time that I don't have a problem building muscle, so I'm never tracking in a surplus or like trying to really hit like above maintenance intentionally. that just more happens naturally for me. But I will track my food intake. Like I am currently considering doing I have some performance goals. So I'm considering doing like a high rocks competition in December. And I want to make sure I'm really fueling well for that. So I don't get injured. I don't like bonk during cardio sessions and different things like that. So if I have a fat loss goal or a performance goal, I really like to track my food intake because it matters more. When I'm in a calorie deficit, I'm more likely to feel exhausted and hungry. And so I just need to be more detailed with my intake so I feel my best. And then same with the performance goal. If training intensity is up, I want to make sure I'm fueling like an athlete because I can't be like inconsistent with my eating and feel good with training. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say with that. But when I'm not tracking and when clients move to maintenance, there's so many ways to do it. You know, you can have some guardrails in place, like visually making sure 3 times a day, I'm going to have a protein forward meal. I'm going to include a cup of veggies with it. Like it could be as simple as that. Or it could be, I'm going to track 2 days of the week and one weekend day and just kind of get like a general snapshot of how my week's looking. And if there's any big kind of holes, so there's so many ways that you can do it to where it feels like you have sort of some guardrails in place to maintain your progress, but don't need to be quite so detailed. I'm definitely not a track forever kind of person, and it sounds like Marissa isn't either.
No. Yeah, and again, I use same thing that Michaela says. I use it for very certain goals, whether it be, I want to gain a lot more muscle. I'm someone that has to try a little bit harder to gain muscle. And so I tend to track because if I'm in a very stressful state, I actually tend to undereat. And I'll notice that I'm tired, not recovering well, my muscles depleting. So it depends what my goals are, but if I have a very specific goal, that's when I track. Beyond that, I do intuitive eat. And if you're someone that's been tracking for a long time, you probably have so much more knowledge than you actually think you do. You can probably look at a protein and say, that's 4 or 5 ounces. That's about 30 grams of protein. I'll be good. So I always recommend in maintenance, try to intuitive eat so that you're not always attached to a tracker for the rest of your life because I truly believe that alone can cause a bad relationship with food, and no one should be attached to a tracker, their app, or a phone forever to make progress.
Yeah, I agree. Someone asked about, it sounds like they've been diligent with zone, kind of staying in that lower intensity, zone 2 for their cardio sessions during this fat loss phase. And they were wondering if they could add more intensity and interval sessions a few times per week now that they're coming out of fat loss. And I'm sure you have thoughts on that. I was just going to say a few sessions per week is very different than a couple sessions per week. And so that is where like I'm a good example of that. If I want to train for high rocks, that will be a few sessions per week where I'm training with a intensity in a way that I'm not currently training. So I will not have a fat loss goal if that is the case. And I'm going to have to really, really make sure I'm prioritizing recovery. And so anytime you're adding intensity, like you're going to be adding stress, right? So as we age, we need more recovery. So probably lifting 4 days a week and having a few intense sessions per week is going to be too much for most people. I would say, like, unless your life revolves around your training and you can really prioritize recovery, sleep, food, like there's just a lot that takes. That's training like a competitive athlete. But I think that it's okay to have intense sessions in your week too. And so start with one, assess recovery, add a second, maybe 3 weeks in, 2 weeks in, assess recovery, and then go from there. I would say 3 per week is probably like a good maximum. And this is going to really depend on like what are you doing exactly? It's hard to give hard and fast rules, but 3 high intensity sessions that are like 30 minutes in time duration, I would say per week is probably kind of where I would max out if you're lifting 3 to 5 days a week, 3 to 4 days a week, in terms of being able to recover. But what would you say on that, Marissa?
I'm about the same. I would say remember that when you're going through a reverse, typically you're not out of a fat loss phase right away. So if
Yeah.
you're coming out at 1500 right now and say you increased even 200, say you got to 1700, you're probably at the higher end of a fat loss, but you're still not out of fat loss. So just because you increase 200 calories doesn't mean, okay, now I'm going to add a whole bunch of stress to my body. Because again, you're still in fat loss, your body's still recovering. So I would exactly what Michaela said. I would add, if you want to add another cardio session or a little bit more intensity to your workouts, by all means do so, but I would do it strategically and like slowly, just like you are with adding calories. So maybe it's one extra day of cardio right now, see how you feel, see how you recover, and then add from there.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Let's see, I don't think I see any other questions. So yeah, thank you so much, Maurissa. Obviously, if you have any questions, ask them in the app. The group is going until the 29th, and we will be posting the before and after slash testimonial questionnaire in the next couple of days. And you have until the 30th to submit that. And we're going to be giving away a free strategy call, which you can use, I would say, anytime in the next three months with one of the coaches on our team. So to just talk through kind of strategy, goals, macros moving forward, this would be a really good thing to use maybe at the end once you move into maintenance and just have different goals as your goals shift. And we would love to jump on a call with you and do that. So that will be at the end of the challenge. We would love to hear your testimonials, love to see your before and after photos. We will choose a random winner because we want it to I don't want it to be dependent on before and afters. Mostly because we don't want anyone to do anything extreme for those photos, but it is really fun to see progress change too. So if you have questions in the meantime, let us know. And we're super excited for all of you to finish strong. Even if you're continuing with fat loss, like Maurissa said, if you know, like, okay, I want to move into maintenance soon, what would my macro range kind of be? Then we can do that before the end of the cohort. And yes, just if you have any kind of ending questions, please let us know. But we will be so excited to coach you for the next week and a half still. And we have a habits challenge in July. We have another fat loss cohort in September. I think September, yes, is the plan. Yep. So we'd love to have you for those futures. And then obviously one-on-one coaching is an awesome option if you want more individualized support, if you've loved this, but want to kind of step it up in terms of individualization and just the one-on-one coaching approach. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day, week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.